Segregation remains one of the most pressing social issues in the United States, shaping communities, access to resources, and quality of life. While some cities have made progress, others continue to show sharp racial and economic divides. In today's video, Discover Top 10 Places takes a closer look at the 10 most segregated major U.S. cities. We'll explore which cities have the most pronounced racial and economic divisions, the historical context behind this segregation, and how it affects everyday life for residents. Stay tuned to understand these complex urban patterns and their long-term impact. Number 10. New Orleans, Louisiana. It is widely recognized as one of the most racially and economically segregated cities in the United States, with a long history that has shaped its current urban landscape. Segregation in the city can be traced back to slavery, the post-Civil War era, and Jim Crow laws, which created clear divisions between black and white communities. These historical patterns were reinforced through discriminatory housing practices, including redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and unequal access to loans, which concentrated African American populations in certain neighborhoods while wealthier, predominantly white areas thrived. The impact of Hurricane Katrina further intensified these divides. Predominantly white neighborhoods received faster and more substantial rebuilding support, while many black communities faced delays in reconstruction, limited access to federal aid, and ongoing economic challenges. The displacement caused by the hurricane disproportionately affected low-income black residents, altering neighborhood demographics and perpetuating cycles of poverty and segregation. Even today, the legacy of Katrina is visible in the stark contrasts between affluent and under-resourced neighborhoods across the city. Segregation in New Orleans also influences access to essential services and opportunity. Predominantly black neighborhoods often contend with underfunded schools, limited healthcare facilities, and fewer employment options, while predominantly white neighborhoods benefit from better infrastructure, safer streets, and higher quality public services. These disparities contribute to long-term differences in life outcomes, including education, income, and health, highlighting the deep-rooted effects of racial and economic segregation. Efforts to address segregation in New Orleans have included urban redevelopment initiatives, affordable housing projects, and programs aimed at improving education and economic opportunities in marginalized neighborhoods. Despite these efforts, structural and historical barriers remain significant, making it a city where racial and economic divides continue to shape the lives of its residents. New Orleans stands as a powerful example of how history, policy, and natural disasters intersect to create persistent urban segregation. Number 9. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is frequently cited as the most segregated major city in the United States, with stark racial and economic divides that have persisted for decades. Historical practices such as redlining, restrictive housing covenants, and discriminatory lending concentrated African American populations in specific neighborhoods while white residents moved to the suburbs. These patterns created clear geographic and social separation, which continues to influence the city's urban landscape today. Economic disparities in Milwaukee are closely linked to its segregation. Predominantly black neighborhoods often face high unemployment rates, underfunded schools, and limited access to health care, while predominantly white areas enjoy more resources, higher incomes, and better public services. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty and limit opportunities for upward mobility among marginalized communities, perpetuating inequality across generations. Segregation also affects Milwaukee's infrastructure, public services, and quality of life. Predominantly minority neighborhoods often contend with lower quality housing, fewer recreational facilities, and inadequate public transportation. In contrast, predominantly white neighborhoods typically have well-maintained streets, parks, and community resources, highlighting the stark contrasts within the city. Efforts to address segregation in Milwaukee have included affordable housing initiatives, community development programs, and policies aimed at improving education and economic opportunities in marginalized neighborhoods. Despite these measures, historical policies and structural inequalities continue to maintain high levels of residential and economic segregation. Milwaukee's example underscores the enduring impact of systemic discrimination on urban communities in the United States. Number 8. Chicago, Illinois. It has long been recognized as one of the most segregated major cities in the United States, with racial and economic divisions deeply embedded in its neighborhood. Historical practices like redlining, discriminatory lending, and racially restrictive covenants concentrated African American populations in the south and west sides, while wealthier white populations moved to the north side and surrounding suburbs. These patterns created stark geographic separations that continue to shape the city's social and economic landscape, Economic disparities in Chicago are closely tied to its segregation. Predominantly Black and Latinx neighborhoods often face underinvestment, higher unemployment, and limited access to quality education and health care. In contrast, predominantly white neighborhoods enjoy more resources, better funded schools, and greater economic opportunity. These differences perpetuate cycles of inequality and restrict social mobility, making it difficult for marginalized communities to break free from systemic disadvantage. Chicago's segregation also affects public services and infrastructure. Predominantly minority neighborhoods often contend with fewer public amenities, lower quality transportation options, and higher rates of crime, while wealthier areas benefit from well-maintained streets, parks, and community services. This spatial inequality reinforces social divides and contributes to ongoing tensions between different parts of the city. Despite these challenges, there are initiatives aimed at reducing segregation in Chicago. Community development programs, affordable housing projects, and educational reforms seek to bridge gaps in opportunity and resources. However, decades of entrenched policies and socio-economic patterns make desegregation a complex and ongoing struggle. Chicago's example illustrates how historical, economic, and policy factors can combine to sustain urban segregation in a modern city. Number 7, Detroit, Michigan. It is widely recognized as one of the most segregated major cities in the United States, with deep-rooted racial and economic divides that have persisted for decades. The city's segregation is the result of historical factors such as industrial decline, discriminatory housing practices, and the phenomenon of white flight, which saw wealthier white residents moving to the suburbs, while African American populations were concentrated in specific urban neighborhoods. These patterns created long-lasting geographic and social separations that continue to define the city's landscape today. Economic inequality in Detroit is closely intertwined with its segregation. Predominantly Black neighborhoods face higher unemployment rates, lower median household incomes, and limited access to quality education, healthcare, and public services. Conversely, predominantly white suburbs enjoy greater economic resources, well-funded schools, and superior infrastructure. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty, limit social mobility, and contribute to systemic inequality across generations. Segregation also impacts the city's infrastructure, public safety, and access to essential services. Minority neighborhoods often struggle with underfunded schools, inadequate public transportation, and limited healthcare facilities, while wealthier neighborhoods have better maintained streets, parks, and recreational amenities. This unequal distribution of resources perpetuates disparities in quality of life and opportunities, highlighting the structural challenges facing Detroit's residents. Historical events such as the 1967 Detroit riots, deindustrialization, and the decline of the auto industry further exacerbated segregation, leading to population decline and concentrated poverty in certain neighborhoods. Urban redevelopment efforts have attempted to address these issues, but disparities remain entrenched due to decades of systemic discrimination and economic challenges. Efforts to combat segregation in Detroit include community development initiatives, affordable housing programs, and policies aimed at improving educational and economic opportunities for marginalized communities. Despite these interventions, Detroit's segregation persists as a stark reminder of how historical, economic, and social forces can shape the long-term urban fabric of a major American city. Number 6, Cleveland, Ohio. It is one of the most racially and economically segregated cities in the United States, with long-standing divisions that continue to shape its urban landscape. Historical policies such as redlining, discriminatory lending practices, and suburbanization concentrated African American populations in certain neighborhoods, while wealthier white residents moved to the suburbs. These patterns created clear geographic and economic divides that persist today, influencing education, employment, and access to resources. Economic disparities in Cleveland are closely linked to segregation. Predominantly Black neighborhoods often face high unemployment rates, lower median household incomes, and underfunded schools, while predominantly white areas enjoy better economic resources, higher quality education, and access to public services. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty and limit opportunities for upward mobility among residents in marginalized communities. Segregation in Cleveland also affects public services, infrastructure, and quality of life. Minority neighborhoods frequently experience poorly maintained streets, limited public transportation, and fewer recreational facilities, whereas predominantly white neighborhoods have superior infrastructure, amenities, and access to services. These differences highlight the stark contrasts in living conditions, within the city. Historical events such as the decline of manufacturing jobs and urban economic shifts have further intensified Cleveland's segregation, leaving certain neighborhoods concentrated with poverty and limited economic opportunity. Urban revitalization efforts, affordable housing programs, and educational reforms have attempted to bridge these gaps, but systemic and historical challenges continue to sustain segregation. Cleveland exemplifies how historical policies, economic trends, and urban planning decisions can create persistent racial and economic divides in American cities. Number 5. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is among the most racially and economically segregated major cities in the United States. Historical factors including redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and suburbanization concentrated African American populations in specific neighborhoods, while wealthier white residents moved to suburban areas. These policies created long-standing geographic and economic divides that continue to shape access to resources, education, and employment opportunities in the city. Economic disparities in Philadelphia are starkly tied to segregation. Predominantly black neighborhoods often experience higher unemployment, lower household incomes, and underfunded public schools. Meanwhile, predominantly white neighborhoods tend to enjoy greater economic resources, better educational facilities, and improved public services. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty and limit upward mobility for residents in marginalized communities. Segregation also impacts Philadelphia's infrastructure, public services, and quality of life. Minority neighborhoods often have fewer recreational facilities, limited public transportation options, and aging infrastructure, while predominantly white neighborhoods enjoy better maintained streets, parks, and community amenities. This unequal access to essential services further entrenches social and economic divides across the city. Historical and economic factors, including the decline of industrial jobs and urban disinvestment, have exacerbated segregation in Philadelphia over time. Efforts such as community development programs, affordable housing initiatives, and educational reforms aim to reduce these disparities, but the city continues to face challenges in overcoming the deeply rooted legacy of residential and economic segregation. Philadelphia serves as a clear example of how historical policies and economic shifts can maintain persistent racial and economic divisions in urban America. Number 4. St. Louis, Missouri. It is widely recognized as one of the most racially and economically segregated cities in the United States. The city's segregation stems from a long history of discriminatory housing policies, including redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and exclusionary zoning, which concentrated African American populations in specific neighborhoods, while wealthier white residents moved to the suburbs. These historic practices created deep-rooted geographic and social divisions that continue to influence the city's economic and social landscape today. Economic disparities in St. Louis are closely tied to its segregation. Predominantly black neighborhoods often face high unemployment rates, lower median household incomes, and limited access to quality education and healthcare. Conversely, predominantly white neighborhoods enjoy better funded schools, greater economic resources, and improved public service. These differences reinforce cycles of poverty and limit social mobility for residents in marginalized communities. Segregation in St. Louis also affects public infrastructure, transportation, and quality of life. Minority neighborhoods frequently contend with aging housing stock, fewer recreational facilities, and limited access to public services, while predominantly white areas benefit from well-maintained streets, parks, and community amenities. These disparities contribute to long-standing inequalities in education, health, and economic opportunity across the city. Historical events such as the post-World War II suburban boom and industrial decline further intensified Louis's segregation, concentrating poverty in inner-city neighborhoods, while wealthier residents moved outward. Efforts to address these divisions include affordable housing initiatives, community development programs, and urban revitalization projects, yet the city continues to grapple with persistent racial and economic segregation. Louis exemplifies how historical policies, economic changes, and urban planning can have lasting impacts on a city's social and geographic landscape. Number 3. Baltimore, Maryland. It is one of the most racially and economically segregated major cities in the United States, with divisions that have been reinforced over decades. Historical policies such as redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and discriminatory lending concentrated African American populations in certain neighborhoods, while wealthier white residents moved to suburban areas. These patterns created deep geographic and social divides that continue to shape access to education, employment, and public services in the city today. Economic disparities in Baltimore are closely tied to its segregation. Predominantly black neighborhoods often experience higher unemployment rates, lower median incomes, and underfunded schools, while predominantly white areas benefit from better economic resources, higher quality education, and improved access to public services. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty and limit social mobility for residents of marginalized communities, perpetuating long-term inequality. Segregation in Baltimore also impacts infrastructure, public safety, and quality of life. Minority neighborhoods frequently contend with aging housing stock, limited public transportation options, and fewer recreational facilities, whereas wealthier, predominantly white neighborhoods enjoy well-maintained streets, parks, and community resources. This unequal access to essential services underscores the city's persistent social and economic divides. Historical events such as deindustrialization, population shifts, and urban disinvestment have intensified Baltimore's segregation over time. Efforts to address these disparities include affordable housing programs, community development initiatives, and education reforms aimed at improving opportunities in marginalized neighborhoods. Despite these interventions, Baltimore continues to struggle with entrenched racial and economic segregation, highlighting the enduring effects of historical policies on urban communities in America. Number 2, Memphis, Tennessee. It is one of the most racially and economically segregated major cities in the United States, with clear divisions between neighborhoods shaped by race and income. Historical practices, such as redlining, discriminatory lending, and suburbanization, concentrated African American populations in specific urban neighborhoods, while wealthier white residents moved to surrounding suburbs. These policies created long-lasting geographic and social divides that continue to impact the city's economic and social landscape today. Economic disparities in Memphis are closely linked to segregation. Predominantly black neighborhoods often experience higher unemployment rates, lower median household incomes, and underfunded schools. In contrast, predominantly white neighborhoods enjoy better economic resources, well-funded schools, and greater access to healthcare and public services. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty and limit upward mobility for residents in marginalized communities, contributing to systemic inequality across generations. Segregation in Memphis also affects access to infrastructure, public safety, and essential services. Minority neighborhoods frequently contend with aging housing, limited public transportation, and fewer recreational facilities, while predominantly white neighborhoods benefit from better maintained streets, parks, and community amenities. These disparities highlight the stark contrasts in living conditions and opportunities within the city. Historical events including industrial decline, suburbanization, and population shifts have intensified segregation in Memphis over time. Efforts to address these disparities included community development initiatives, affordable housing programs, and policies aimed at improving education and economic opportunities for marginalized communities. Despite these interventions, Memphis remains a prime example of how historical, economic, and social factors can sustain racial and economic segregation in urban America. Number 1, Atlanta, Georgia. It is widely recognized as one of the most racially and economically segregated major cities in the United States. Despite its reputation as a thriving metropolitan hub and a center of black culture and business, the city continues to experience pronounced divides between neighborhoods along racial and economic lines. Historical factors, such as redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and discriminatory lending policies, concentrated African American populations in specific neighborhoods, while wealthier white residents moved to suburban areas. These long-standing patterns have shaped the city's social, economic, and geographic landscape. Economic disparities in Atlanta are closely linked to segregation. Predominantly black neighborhoods often face higher unemployment rates, lower median household incomes, and underfunded schools, whereas predominantly white neighborhoods enjoy better funded educational institutions, greater economic resources, and improved public services. These disparities reinforce cycles of poverty, limit social mobility, and create systemic inequalities that affect multiple generations. Segregation in Atlanta also impacts public services, infrastructure, and quality of life. Minority neighborhoods frequently contend with aging housing stock, limited public transportation options, and fewer recreational facilities, while predominantly white neighborhoods have well-maintained streets, parks, and community amenities. These disparities highlight the stark contrast in opportunities and living conditions between different parts of the city. Urban development and suburbanization have further intensified Atlanta's segregation. The growth of affluent suburbs, combined with historical disinvestment in certain urban neighborhoods, has concentrated poverty and limited access to resources for marginalized communities. Efforts to address segregation include affordable housing initiatives, urban revitalization programs, and policies aimed at improving education and economic opportunity in underserved neighborhoods. Despite these measures, Atlanta's racial and economic segregation remains a significant challenge, illustrating how historical, economic, and social factors continue to shape major cities in the United States. While these cities are vibrant and culturally rich, their persistent racial and economic divides reveal deep-rooted social challenges. Which of these cities surprised you the most? Comment below and share your thoughts. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to discover top 10 places for more in-depth explorations of cities, social issues, and global trends. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.